the man you never saw. Thomas Hunt was not the kind of criminal people expect. There were no luxury cars parked outside his home, no designer clothes, no online trail advertising success. If you passed him on a street in Greater Manchester, you would not have noticed him. According to police, that was exactly how he wanted it. Investigators say that behind one of the most significant organised drug supply conspiracies uncovered by Greater Manchester Police in recent years was Thomas Hunt, a man who deliberately avoided attention. He rarely handled drugs himself, rarely travelled with them, and rarely appeared in places investigators traditionally associate with serious organised crime. Yet between March and October 2024, police allege Hunt controlled a network responsible for moving large quantities of Class A and Class B drugs across the United Kingdom. Cocaine, heroin, amphetamine, and MDMA were transported across hundreds of miles. The estimated value of the drugs linked to the conspiracy ran into the millions. Prosecutors described it as a structured, sustained criminal enterprise. This was not street dealing, it was not chaotic. It was organised, methodical, and designed to stay hidden. This is Britain's underbelly. If you want more in-depth stories from the darker side of Britain, subscribe. A different kind of organised crime. Organised crime has changed. Gone are the days when large criminal networks relied solely on visible violence or street-level control. Modern organised crime is quieter. It relies on distance, insulation, and routine. Distance between leadership and risk. Distance between planners and couriers, distance between profit and consequence. Police say the network allegedly led by Thomas Hunt reflected this modern approach. It operated like a supply chain rather than a gang. Roles were clearly defined, information was restricted. Those at the top rarely touched the product that generated their income. This structure made the network harder to detect, harder to dismantle, and easier to deny. Early patterns. The first signs emerged in early 2024. Across different parts of the UK, police officers were recording drug seizures that initially appeared unrelated. Cocaine seized during a routine traffic stop, heroin recovered from a property search, MDMA intercepted during a roadside check hundreds of miles away. Different people, different locations, different circumstances. But analysts began to notice similarities. The quantities were consistent. Packaging shared common features, travel routes overlapped, certain phone numbers appeared repeatedly at the edges of different investigations. What seemed like coincidence slowly began to look like coordination. Tracing the network. As officers worked backwards from seizures and arrests, a pattern began to emerge. Vehicles linked to drug movements often originated from or returned to Greater Manchester. Couriers travelled long distances, but their journeys consistently connected back to the same region. Phones used to arrange movements were activated in Manchester, they were discarded and replaced there too. Manchester was not where the drugs were being sold, it was where decisions were being made. More specifically, areas around Middleton and North Manchester began appearing again and again in intelligence reports. Thomas Hunt identified. Within those reports, one name began to surface repeatedly, Thomas Hunt. Police allege Hunt was not involved in street-level dealing or courier work. Instead, they say he operated as a controller, directing others while remaining physically distant from the drugs themselves. Senior members of the group allegedly reported back to him after completing tasks. Deliveries made, drugs stored, cash moved. Hunt did not need to be present. The structure allowed the operation to function without him exposing himself. Investigators believe this separation was intentional and central to the network's longevity. Family and trust. Trust is essential in organised crime. Without it, networks collapse quickly. One of the strongest forms of trust is family, and in this case, family played a key role. Thomas Hunt's brother, Anthony Hunt, was deeply involved in the operation. Unlike Thomas, Anthony's role was hands-on. He was linked directly to properties used by the group and to locations where drugs were stored. During the investigation, DNA evidence recovered from a key storage site tied Anthony Hunt directly to the conspiracy. That evidence would later prove crucial in court. The family connection strengthened the network, but it also made relationships easier for police to map once the investigation progressed. The operational core. While Thomas Hunt was alleged to sit at the top of the structure, police identified Dylan Robinson as the operational core of the network. Robinson was described by investigators as Hunt's right-hand man. He was responsible for coordinating day-to-day activity, arranging courier movements, managing access to storage units, and ensuring drugs and cash moved according to plan. Robinson operated at the center of the conspiracy, bridging the gap between leadership and those taking risks on the ground. His proximity to the operation made him indispensable, but it also made him vulnerable once police closed in. The scale of the supply. As warrants were executed and searches carried out, the scale of the operation became clear. Police recovered over 15 kilograms of cocaine, nearly 2 kilograms of heroin, more than 6 kilograms of amphetamine, and close to 7,000 ecstasy tablets. The estimated street value of drugs linked to the conspiracy was around £1.8 million. This was wholesale supply. The quantities involved were far beyond personal use or low-level dealing. Prosecutors argued that the volume alone demonstrated the seriousness of the operation. Storage and separation. One of the defining features of the network was its use of self-storage units. These facilities allowed the group to store drugs and other items away from residential addresses directly linked to senior members. Access to these units was restricted. Only trusted individuals were given keys or codes. Surveillance footage showing who entered and when became a vital part of the investigation. The storage units reduced risk and increased control. They were another layer of insulation between leadership and exposure. Moving drugs across the country. The network relied on a group of couriers to transport drugs and cash across the UK. These individuals travelled hundreds of miles at a time, often with little knowledge of the wider operation. Journeys linked to the conspiracy included trips to Bristol, Carlisle, Glasgow, Newcastle, and Hampshire. Each courier was given limited information, reducing the risk that anyone could expose the entire network if arrested. This compartmentalisation was deliberate. Stanley Ainsley. Stanley Ainsley was one of the most trusted couriers identified by police. Evidence showed he made repeated trips on behalf of the network, handling significant quantities of drugs and cash. Ainsley was not a one-off participant. He was relied upon, trusted, and repeatedly used. For his role in the conspiracy, he was sentenced to 8 years and 7 months in prison. Graham Sykes. Another courier was Graham Sykes. Police evidence showed Sykes completed at least 18 journeys connected to the operation. He was not involved in planning or leadership, but his reliability made him valuable. The court sentenced Sykes to 5 years and 3 months in prison, reflecting his repeated involvement. Other accused and associated figures. As the investigation widened, police identified several other individuals connected to the conspiracy, each playing different roles. Lisa Prescott became involved through her relationship with a senior member of the group. She was linked to handling cocaine and being present at storage locations. DNA recovered from gloves tied her to premises used by the network. Her role was described as supportive rather than controlling. Rachel Blackburn Stanley assisted Anthony Hunt by providing vehicles, driving him to meetings, and allowing addresses to be used. The court accepted her involvement was secondary but still criminal. Thomas Lockwood acted as a drug tester, assessing quality before onward distribution. While not a leader, his role was considered important in maintaining the commercial viability of the supply. Robert Earnshaw operated a local distribution point connected to the wider network. Phone evidence showed repeated contact with numbers linked to the conspiracy. Aidan Hopkins acted as a courier with links to a southern organised crime group. He was arrested in Hampshire in possession of Class A drugs and a viable firearm. Evidence showed repeated journeys north to collect drugs. Ammunition and escalation. During searches, police recovered 224 rounds of live ammunition. No firearms were found at the same locations, but ammunition alone significantly increased the seriousness of the case. Prosecutors argued it suggested preparation and the potential for escalation, even if weapons were not recovered alongside it. Communication and secrecy. The network relied heavily on encrypted messaging apps and burner phones. Devices were replaced regularly. Messages were brief and coded. Despite this, patterns emerged: who contacted whom, how often, what happened next. Even without explicit language, metadata revealed structure. Those patterns helped police identify hierarchy and control. Surveillance and patience. Greater Manchester Police ran a long-term surveillance operation. Officers tracked vehicle movements, storage unit access, phone activity, and travel patterns. The goal was not speed, it was understanding. Investigators wanted to dismantle the structure, not just arrest individuals. The arrest phase. Once police were confident they could present the case as a single organised conspiracy, arrests were authorised, multiple properties were searched, drugs and cash were seized. Several members of the network were arrested in coordinated operations. The structure collapsed quickly once exposed. In court, prosecutors presented the case as a sustained, organised criminal enterprise, not coincidence, not association, organisation. The court accepted that framing. Sentences. Dylan Robinson was sentenced to 12 years and 6 months in prison. Anthony Hunt received 11 years and 3 months. Stanley Ainsley received 8 years and 7 months. Graham Sykes received 5 years and 3 months. Other defendants received a mix of custodial sentences, suspended sentences, and community orders, reflecting their level of involvement. In total, 6 defendants were jailed for more than 44 years combined. The missing man. One name was absent from the dock, Thomas Hunt. Despite being identified by police as the alleged leader of the operation, Hunt was not present at sentencing. Authorities confirmed he remained wanted, with an active search ongoing. Why this case matters. This case illustrates how modern organised crime operates. Quietly, methodically, without spectacle. It shows how networks can function without violence, relying instead on routine and separation. And it shows how difficult it can be to bring those at the top to justice. An unfinished story. The drugs were seized, the couriers were jailed, the structure was exposed, but until Thomas Hunt is arrested and brought before a court, the story remains unfinished. For a time, the system worked, and then it didn't.